distancing. I guess that
Leads
social distancing. I guess that leads us.
into another topic.
It's like the hot term of the year. I think
Yeah.
if you look back on the history of the English language, I don't think anybody ever mentioned the word social and distancing.
Not to this level. I feel like there's a lot of things we've been talking about that nobody ever expected.
Right. So I'm stupid about social distancing. So what is it? Why do we need to do it?
Sure. I mean, so really, social distancing comes down to, I mean, I think it's kind of like you want to stay within a unit. And then everybody kind of talks about these like safe pods, and you really want to only associate close contact with people that you're regularly in, and you kind of all maintain within that. So families are kind of socially distanced together.
Right.
And the idea is really to reduce the amount of contact, of especially close contact with other people, that you don't know their whereabouts or their if they're positive or not. Especially with so much asymptomatic transmission, we can't go by, I'm not feeling well, you should stay away from me, because
right.
clearly there's a lot of transmission. So social distancing allows us to prevent transmission that we don't necessarily know about, which is
I got you.
definitely something that's a problem with this specific virus, because there's so much asymptomatic transmission, it appears, and there's also a lengthy time before symptom onset, and you might be producing a lot of virus that you can transmit well before you start even feeling sick if you do. So social distancing kind of stops those transmission events we don't even know about or potentially might not ever know about. And
So is social distancing just social distancing when I go out? Or like, okay, I need to just be 6 to 8 feet, or is it more than that? Is it more about, like you said, the people you hang out with? Like, is it? I think the probably the more proper term is like social isolation. But I know when
Right.
people hear isolation, they think about you in some
Just being
dark
by
room in a
yourself,
straight jacket
yeah.
or something like that. But I guess you just want to restrict those who you go around. Period is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think for me, social distancing means like your close contact is only a few people,
Right.
and a small amount of people, and they're only in close contact with you and the other people. So to me, social distancing isn't just 6 feet distance. And I think there's even some studies out that have shown that transmission doesn't just happen when you're within 6 feet. We know
Right,
there's
right.
potential. It's just the most likely, 6 feet is a good kind of, when we're talking about virus particles, how far they can move out. 6 feet is generally a pretty safe distance, but we also know there's evidence of, circulation potentially through HVAC and things like that. So even if you're sitting in an office building and you're 6 feet away from somebody, but if there's circulation in the air and you don't have a good HVAC system, you could have spread going on within that.
That
And
is so scary to me because, like, just think about going into the office and, oh, well, nobody's around me. I'm
Right.
fine. I'm fine.
Right.
And then you actually know you test positive for coronavirus. I'm like, wait a minute. I didn't see anybody.
Yeah.
I didn't talk to anybody. I got a mask on.
Right.
How do I still have coronavirus?
I mean, there's so many different potential places where you could be exposed to it.
Right.
If you're in an office, you could be potentially touching, a surface that has the virus
That's
on
true.
it.
Yeah, that's
and
very true.
and although that's a relatively low level of transmission,
Right.
that is one route of it as well. And that's why, things like hand washing are important, as well
Right.
as
Right.
just, especially in common things or common areas, you really want to be careful. And so I think we just have to be aware that like it's not just being next to somebody that's sick that
So,
transmits it.
how do you think we've handled that social distancing? With it?
Terribly. I think I haven't really seen a lot of social distancing, to be honest. And I feel
Wow.
like, I think there's a subset of the people.
Not even just okay. Just it's downright
I
terrible.
think some people are doing great. And then I think there's a lot of people who aren't even really trying. I think they kind of gave up. And now we're in a position where
think
people
they're
are like,
exhausted at this point.
yeah, I think everybody was on board in the beginning.
Mhm.
It felt like everybody was like, okay, we can knock this out. And I think once we realized that it first of all, I don't think the initial lockdowns were going to do enough to get us to that point
Right.
and to really get rid of it. And now we're stuck with it at this point. And so now it's a more of a mitigation strategy. And so that's what this is, until we're kind of holding off until we have better therapeutics or a vaccine. And so until we have that, we need to put in place some of these things like social distancing.
So-
But I don't think we've been doing that well.
No COVID parties.
No COVID parties. I think it's like it kills every scientist or at least virologist when you start hearing things like this, because there's no rationale for it to
Right.
actually benefit anybody. And so many people have been getting sick and potentially dying from it.
Right.
And I think we just
True.
don't know, and I think I've said this before, where of course, even if you're young and healthy, you have the potential to recover, but we really don't know the long lasting effects. And there's some very strange things about this virus that show me that there could be, you could have months or years where you might still
Yeah,
have effects
that's the
from
really
a,
scary thing about
yeah.
it.
And until we really have studied this virus and know more about it, like I don't want to get it even if I do recover. And I think that the idea that it's everybody will get it eventually is not one we want to spread, because we don't know if down the line there are some viruses that cause damage that can almost cause neurological issues. 8, 10 years down the line, there's things with measles that cause brain issues. Very rare, but it can happen. And so
That's true.
do you want to get coronavirus and then find out in a couple of years that if you had coronavirus, you have a higher risk of something happening in 5 years to you?
Right,
That's
right.
just not something I think I want to play with. And because the virus has some weird, really things that cognitive and brain function and sensory things, that's even more concerning when
But
it comes to that.
and I think a lot of people, especially maybe some of your younger people, I think their mindset is it avoidable at this point? Am I able
Right.
to actually avoid getting coronavirus? When you get all this information from the CDC, from the president, that's, I think, partially a problem in itself, because we're getting so much
Right.
information from these different sources and different outlets that you really don't know what the hell to believe and what not to. So I guess what I'm asking is it avoidable? Is it one of those things where I'm gonna get it eventually? If I don't get it today, I'll get it tomorrow, or I'll get it a year from now, or
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, and that's the part that for me, I think as a scientist, it's really hard to, I can't say with certainty that anything about this, but to me, I think we're getting lower and lower on the possibility that not eventually everybody will be exposed at some point,
Wow.
unfortunately. I think this is here to stay for quite some time.
That's not good.
No, eradication at this point is out the window. We had a window to do it.
It's not good for my gym.
No, I mean, and that's the thing is like, I just don't know where we're going to come to this, but I think it'll be around for quite some time. I
Wow.
don't think a vaccine necessarily is going to be potentially effective enough that we're going to have long lasting immunity. And so
Right.
I think that this is going to be a couple of years of people getting sick, and it comes down to, there's a little bit of immunology related to that. So kind of how your body reacts to a virus is maybe over time we'll be able to generate more and more antibodies. So how your body fights an infection it's seen before.
All right.
And over time it might actually get to the point where your natural immune system might be okay. Just kind of think about, when we had flu pandemics. So I studied flu for my PhD.
Right.
The first couple of years of a new virus entering the human population, it does spread high amounts, and we call that a R naught value. So like how quickly it can spread and how much one case gives another more cases.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, the pathology is usually pretty bad because we've never been exposed to something like
Right.
that. But as your body over time gets exposed, through various events more than once, your antibodies kind of change over time and they might become more effective. And the hope there is that maybe your first infection, your body isn't prepared, and your second infection is still going to be tough, but over time, more and more people have better antibodies to it. And then you get what we call herd immunity, and herd immunity helps to prevent just rapid transmission. And so I think
But how long is that going to take before we get herd immunity?
you have to have usually 70 to 80% of the population has to have immunity.
250 or
Yeah,
however
we're going to
many
have to
million
have
people?
quite a few people who have already gotten it and recovered from it to stop the transmission. So you kind of have to think right now we're almost like, the virus is like we lit a match and everything is kindling.
When you hear that, though, so you're going to get arguments on one side that say, well, we should just let the floodgates.
Right.
Everybody should just get
No.
it, and then we'll get full.
So the problem with that is our healthcare system is not capable of handling
Right,
that.
right.
And the whole flatten the curve, which is what we were, talking about. And that was really to prevent having so many people needing hospitalization that our healthcare system wouldn't be able to support even the ones we could save.
Right.
And so when you've put such a high tax on your hospital system, then people die even if they could have recovered. And so that's really important to still, until we have a better strategy to really stop this or prevent it a little bit better, I would still say that socially distancing is important and all these things, because we want to make sure that we're not increasing the amount of potentially sick people at the same time. And so once we have a vaccine, it will be able to get more herd immunity without needing people to be actively infected. So that helps a lot. But we really won't know the efficacy of those vaccines for quite some time.
And I guess that rolls us right into the next one.